simple, but trust me, this is one that can actually create a beautiful revenue engine for companies, as it has been done for many companies in the world. And we couldn't have better person than Nirupama herself, now who is a career research woman. I mean, a very rare to find, right? A very, very rare to find, trust me. And I'm sure her lecture is going to testify what I'm saying it. Now, before I invite Nirupama to the floor, let me have the pleasure of introducing her to all of you. Currently, she's the consulting partner at the global marketing consulting firm called Worldwide. Now, Brandscapes Worldwide, sorry. And she leads the qualitative research and innovation practice globally at Brandscapes. And she has set up the qualitative offer and thus expanded the GMR practice, which hitherto focused on quantitative work. She has led multi-country projects and programs, led several innovation and ideation workshops, and has developed exclusive tools and techniques. She has 30 plus years of experience spanning ideation, insight development, cultural understanding, concept, communication, and product research, and NPD cross global and regional research engagement. Others. She has extensive experience across the FMCG, consumer durables, technology, and service sectors. She specializes in facilitation for innovation and has co-developed behavioral change protocols. Prior to Brandscapes, Nirupama has worked in AC Nielsen Research, International TNS, and Lowe. She has worked in the computer education sector across leading companies. Nirupama has an MBA degree from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and Masters in Mass Communication Journalism from Usmania University. She has received training in facilitation, ideation, and problem solving. She has led over 70 workshops and a number of multi-country research programs. She has presented and published papers at SMR, MW, MRSI, New MR forums, among others. She has organized national qualitative research seminars, developed training programs, and worked on research accreditation programs. She has given guest lectures at her alma mater, as well as others like Christ University, MICA, among others. And she has also been very, very sought after panel speaker on women leadership seminars, IMB alumni sessions, as well as served on the academic advisory board of private university. I think the list goes on, but for want of time, let me have the pleasure of inviting Nirupama. Over to you, Nirupama.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhary, for those very flattering, and it always sounds lovely when Sukhpreet reads that out.
No, it's absolutely
I would
deserving.
say that, yeah, I would have said that I think the greatest advantage that I've had over all these years is actually having to be so busy and in the midst of thing and being in a profession where you research industrial filters one day, diapers the next, and then laundry in UK. So it makes for it. We always tell people in research that no matter what, you will not die of boredom on the job, right? So that's so welcome everyone. I don't intend to make this a terribly theoretical session. I think you already have a lot of that in your life, and I'm told you have a class 50 minutes from now. So and I'm going to, I think the some of this you already know. It's a matter of being conscious. So what we say is like, when you go and join a gym, right? Some of us practice, some of us don't practice, some of us are interested in getting ourselves fitter and better in a very formal way, some are not. But if you go and join a gym and you see the approach that they take to it, they will teach you after some days when they say, okay, when you're doing this, don't just do it, recruit the right muscle. You can do it without recruiting the right muscle also, but A, that might be very painful, B, that might be the long route, and C, you may not feel the results of that quickly. So consumer centricity and customer insights is like that. It's like recruiting that muscle. It doesn't mean that we don't have that muscle in us. It doesn't mean that we don't intend to use it, but consistency and practice, practice, practice. So it's almost like making that a part of your life. So before I get into the slides, and I want to give you a few examples of what that means, and then maybe we can open up for questions. I'll give you a couple of examples from work that I have been part of. So many years ago, when the scooter industry was still nascent, there's a brand that brought out, and a very popular brand that brought out a new range of colors and products for young people, right? And there were these spiffy little Japanese scooters. And, then they had a beautiful ad campaign, which was, with full of Japanese models, as in women, Japanese models. And there were, beautiful song, dance, jingle. And I was leading the research. And when we watched it, we said, hey, that's perfect. I mean, they've understood young people, like, who doesn't love music? Who doesn't love beautiful women? And who doesn't love, great colors and great looking vehicles? Because this is what a 19-year-old would aspire to. And I'm talking to about 20 years ago. And group after group, we found, the young men silent, when we showed it to them. And then when we got to the bottom of it and we asked them, there was this ad which had this great jingle, and in the end it signed off and said dream machine. So after the second session, one boy who had kept silent throughout, he sort of perked up at the end and he said, ma'am, can I ask you, who is the idiot who has come up with this? So I said, no, why would you say that, right? So he said, if anyone knew, and I know this is a great scooter, you don't have to sell that idea to me, but please understand, I'm 19 years of age. I want a motorbike. मेरा बाप है कि मेरे को मोटर बाइक नहीं दिलाएगा, वो कह रहा है कि आप सिर्फ ये स्कूटर ले सकते हो, एंड ये मेरा मजबूरी है अभी फिलहाल. So I would advise you to please not call it things like dream machine. It's very far away from a dream. And don't jale pe namak mat chhadakna, don't do that by saying this. So tell me it's light, tell me it's fun, tell me it's easy, tell me it gets me from point A to B, tell me all of this. But do not oversell to me and insult my intelligence, because it is simply not my dream. So, in that one sentence, that young boy had taught us the difference between having an insight and having a consumer centered insight, right? And he also added a last line that, by the way, we like Japanese vehicles, but we prefer Indian women. So, those models also don't impress us at all. Yeah. Cut to an example of laundry in the UK, where a fellow researcher was researching, and it's a really interesting concept of very sustainable sheets instead of detergent, which you put into your washing machine, and hey presto, it would dissolve, self-dissolve. So there was no detergent residue. Excellent from the point of view of sustainability. And then when they used the product, they were like, when they heard about the concept, and they said, yeah, great. And yet, when we try to get to the bottom of it and ask them that how interested would they be in it, they asked to look at the packaging, right? And when they looked at it, they said, if I had not come today and not used this product, if I was just like any other consumer in the store and you'd shown this to me, then I would never have bought you, looking at this packaging. And so the researcher in question asked, why? Why would you say that? And they said very simply that, how do I know that your product cleans? And this is an established brand which has a good record in stain removal and so on. So they're like, sustainability is a benefit that I'm happy to go with. But I don't buy this product primarily to be sustainable. I buy it so that my washing is excellent. Okay. So you need to tell me that if you're doing that and you are sustainable, that's a win-win. But if it's just about being sustainable, then I'm not sure. I'm wondering whether you can clean at all, right? So these seem very simple, very obvious things. But when we come from a product-centric discourse, yeah, we know everything about our product, and we've probably lived with it, breathed it, right? And it's like a little baby, right, which we have brought up. Now, consumer centricity takes the lens that you might be the mother who gave birth to the child, you might be the person who brought up the child. Now this child is going to go to school. So the feedback you're going to take about your child is now from the lens of that teacher, right? So it's not what your child is that matters, it is what your child is in that context that matters. So context is really what consumer centricity is all about. In order to do that, obviously I'm a mother, I think my child is immediately protective. So in consumer centricity, don't take the feedback that suits you, Don't cherry pick the feedback, and for heaven's sake, never take feedback from people like yourself, because they are you, unless you are the target consumer of your product. Do not even attempt to do that, because in doing so, you're insulating yourself from feedback. And for sure, some of that feedback will sting, some of it will be relevant, some of it will not be relevant, but all of it will be from a user. Yeah. So let's go on to the next slide, Doctor. So let's take the challenge head on. If a lot of you are asking the question that what's the big deal, using words like consumer centricity. If I am offering a product, if I'm creating a service, if I'm making that much effort on R&D, on marketing, on product development, and I'm brainstorming ideas, am I not already customer centric or consumer centric? What's the big fuss? So somebody particularly cynical told us that, yeah, that's just one more jargon, just like words like sustainability, equity, digital transformation, gender sensitivity. Here is one more word that has come out: customer centricity. Is that true? Let's go on to the next slide. Well, I'd just say yes and no. Yeah, it really depends on, it's not about the labeling. You can call it anything else. You might just say this is just good old knowing your customer. Yes. So the label doesn't matter very much. It's the outcomes that matter very much, right? And let's just give you a fun example. Next slide, please, of what we mean by customer centricity. So I don't know which generation you belong to, but there's an iconic movie called Diwar, which made Amitabh Bachchan the megastar. He was an actor even before that who did good work. But if you trace the origins of when he became a megastar, it was this movie called Diwar. So I'm sure some of you have caught it, you've heard about it. Now, in this movie, towards the second half, or towards the end, actually, there is this crucial confrontation scene between two brothers. The one brother, Amitabh Bachchan, who's gone on to the wrong side of the tracks. He's become this criminal underworld, king of everything, and he rules Mumbai literally. And then there's the other brother, the upright policeman, played by Shashi Kapoor. And in that iconic scene and that wonderful baritone that only Mr. Bachchan can have, he says, "Aaj mere paas building hai, bangla hai, property hai, bank balance hai, sab kuch hai. Tumhare paas kya hai?" And the quiet Shashi Kapoor just looks earnestly into the camera and says, "Mere paas maa hai." So customer centricity is like maa. You can have many things in the mix, but do you have what matters? So remember the story about Arjuna, and when he went to the Swayamvar and he was able to shoot looking up. What was he doing differently? Everyone else over there was also, in fact, very, very capable of doing that in that moment. So what he was doing was he was focusing on the eye of the fish, nothing else. Focus, focus, focus. So customer centricity is actually like that. It's about focusing on what matters the most. And when something matters the most, you inform yourself around that the most. Secondly, it's also about your purpose. Mere paas maa hai means that's all that matters. That is actually the purpose of all of this, right? Because what your Bangla Gadi, etc., could not get you, because in spite of everything you have, she's with me, she's not with you. And that's all that matters. So this is what we mean by true customer centricity, that it is about them when you're creating it for them, right? So when you're doing it for them, it's, of course, everyone needs the product to make financial sense. Of course, you need a commercial intent to meet, you know, uh, that as well. But it's a willing choice that you make about how much that customer matters to you, right? How central are they, right? So in the many years of research, one very telling thing has been that many briefs have come to us, thousands of briefs come, and lots of consulting projects, and lots of guidance outside, formal, informal. The always the trigger for all of that is things are going bad, right? When things go south, when you're bottom up, that's when you ask for, what is happening? Why aren't women buying my product? Why are teenagers not interested in me anymore? right? Probably that is only about fixing it at that point in time, right? So the point about customer centricity is it's longitudinal. It's not only as and when you want feedback. It's not a project, it's a program. So it's continuously on it. Now, let me give you another example. And you don't have to be a marketing person or a researcher or a highly qualified person in order to be consumer centric. Some people are and some people are not. For example, I guarantee you that your local Kirana wala bhaiya is far more consumer centric than anyone else in any mall. When you walk in and you've known him for a long period of time and he's observed you, there's a quite a good understanding of everything. And then he will quietly remind you at the end of that thing that आज ये नहीं खरीदना आपको. अच्छा बाबूजी बहुत दिन से दिख नहीं रहे कैसे हैं. You can call that smart sales pitch. But the fact of the matter is you have choices and so does he, right? So understanding your customer so closely, right? Let me give you another parallel. Any shadi wala ghar, any family function where there are 15 or 20 or 25 people who've turned up. Normally the women in the morning will be fixing tea and coffee, right? They do it intuitively. They don't go and ask people, do you want yours with latte? Do you want is yours a macchiato? Is this and that, right? No, they don't do that. But they somehow seem to know who drinks coffee, who drinks tea, who has it with sugar, who doesn't, who likes it very, very gingered up, who doesn't, right? That is called customer centricity. The product might be the same, but it's really tailored or customized, let's say. But if you have to take a twist in the same story, suppose, of course, my mother knows me really well. Maybe I went away to study for 4 years. Maybe I lived in a different city and I came back. And when she made me a cup of coffee, I tell her, no, I've given up milk. And I don't have sugar also, by the way, I want it black. And at that moment, she looks at me in blank incomprehension, saying, I don't really know who you are. That's also what happens when companies stop continuously feeding themselves on what is happening with people, right? Next slide. So really, what is customer centricity and what are consumer insights? They are symbiotic. One is a very important element of operationalizing the other. Definitions, you can pick any definition that you want to. I'm just giving you this because it resonates in a meaningful sort of a way, right? So customer centricity is really about placing your customers at the heart of your company or business, right? Everyone places their customers we place them at our head, we place them at the wallet, we place them at our hands and legs, but we don't always place them at the heart. So it's a simple thing. When it comes down to the chips, I'm going to be asking the question, is this great for my consumers or is this not great for my consumers? As simple as that. Let me give you an example. So there is this brand called Nature's Palette, which in the US, which you makes these interesting products, including a cinnamon waffle. And then they did some research and they figured out, I mean, they're not research, but they knew that there was a certain line of products that was not selling. And since these are all handmade kind of products, they decided to discontinue the cinnamon truffle. A few days later, they received a panic and they stopped the production of those cinnamon truffles. And they announced it that they would not. A few days later, they received a panic call from a mother who said that she has a severely autistic son. And the only thing that that child eats are these cinnamon truffles. So she was distraught when she heard that this had been discontinued, and she sort of begged for, if there's any way she can get. The company went and traced the last 6 cases that were available and sent it to the mother, right? And then they also then thought about it and they said, well, there are people who obviously need this. Let's not do this commercially, but let's make this available as an order basis for people who want to in the neighborhood, like like a Swiggy delivery. Extreme amount of consumer centricity. It is not really about, so it meant that they really cared at that point in time. And they didn't just say that they cared, they showed that they cared, right? Now, everyone might not be showing such dramatic ways, But it's how consumer-centric you are is not about what you say. It gives itself away in those kinds of situations, right? And how do you actually become more consumer-centric? Is simple. You have to really be close to your consumer, right? And and you really have to figure out the insights which drive them. What are insights? Little secrets under the surface that explain why they behave the way they do, what motivations, what pain points, what emotions they go through, right? And those are because everyone knows that the functional reasons are the reasons we try something. And the emotional and the social and the sensorial reasons are the reasons we stay. Right? So if very simple economic terms, if you explain why customer centricity makes sense, what is easier? Retaining a customer or continuously preparing for the churn of a new one and building a relationship every day. In today's world, you don't have the same old notion of loyalty like earlier. So you probably have to do a bit of both anyway. But being close to the customer and understanding what is going on right now, as an updated knowledge of what is going right now, you may choose to do it formally, you may choose to do it informally. This doesn't mean that everything requires a formal research to be done. There are many ways of being insightful. But primarily, if you started even just by looking at the people around you in your building, or visit every time you go to a store, look at the brands there and observe what is happening. Many of the times, your consumer insights, you should be able to anticipate. You should be able to understand that this is happening. Okay? Let's go on. So how do you recognize an insight? Kilo ke bhav mein bikta nahi hai insight, despite what clients might believe. An insight is first of all curated. It is not given to you just like that, right? But it has to be thought about, and it is like connecting the dots. So you go through 2-3 different sets of observations, conversations, and different people bringing, jamming together will give you that. But you can always recognize an insight. An insight is the last time when you bought something, you saw something, or you used something, and it gave you that aha feeling. Why hasn't anyone said that, earlier? I so know what this feeling is a customer insight. And it comes, and one of the best definitions of customer insight is it's not always about looking at new landscapes. It could be the same landscape with fresh eyes. If you ask a child to look at a situation, and instead of that adult looking at that situation, why a child? Some two of you who are, very close to each other, similar in everything, will have a different response, right? But that an insight and action, well, so when it is, then when it is, up there, then you say, wow, this is so intuitive. But it's just hanging under the surface. And why is it important to relate it through an insight? Because it comes from customers' life. And second, because people are going to connect to that intuitively. And in that moment, they don't have to be SEC A, B, or C. They don't have to be your user or non-user. They don't have to be people traveling in trains or buses or cars. It could just appeal to everyone, right? So that's the importance of in finding an insight for which you just absolutely have to connect with consumers everywhere they are. What you can begin with doing is connect with yourself as a consumer. Very simply, if I asked you a question with saying that, hey, what did you eat yesterday? You will have no idea. So I suggest what you do is maintain a food diary for the next 4 days. Just maintain it. Don't have to think about it. Don't have to analyze it. Don't have to censor it. Maintain it. After 4 days, look at it. It will tell you a pattern of what you are. If 3 of you did these diaries and compared with each other and you found a pattern, you'll say, heck, that is happening. And then if you go to the retail store and see what is happening with food and beverage, you'll say, oh my goodness, that's what is happening. So that's just training the muscle. You're not recruiting the muscle and you're not using the muscle, but you have to, if you think you're going to be customer centric in anything you do. Let's move on. So becoming more customer centric is obviously a number of things that can be done. It's not a prescriptive list, but this is a perspective. Okay. The difference between everyone wants a consumer and everyone researches them and everyone wants them in their life. No doubt. There's a difference between making someone a priority and making someone a tick the box objective. That's the same difference. Many years ago in Hindustan Lever, which is, of course, a fairly customer-centric company, they started a program where they said, earn your customer passport. They created a passport and said, if you haven't met 30 or 40 consumers in different ways, whether it is in a sales visit, whether it is in some interviewing, whether it is in some observation, whatever, whichever form. If you haven't done that and you haven't filled out your observations, then you're not going to earn this passport. Now you might ask, what is the purpose of that? Isn't that a tick the box activity? The point of that is, for every 3 people who did it out of compliance, there might be 1 person for whom this has become a way of life. And then that is a journey of no return once you do that. Secondly, obsession versus input. Now, very often, we are very, very super obsessed with our own product. We are super, super attached to everything that we create, right? So our obsession in that means that everything else is an input. Customer centricity is exactly the reverse of that. Where if you're obsessed about one thing, it's really about, hey, what are my customers going to be thinking about that? So one marketer had a very good definition. He said, whenever an opportunity comes up, an ad comes up, or anything comes up, we say, how's it going to work for my consumers? Do they need this? What do they want? How will it help them? And if the answer is no, we don't do. Third tip is, a lot of people, of course, become customer centric, but that's like bolting the door after the stable after the horses have gone away. So if you don't use them early on when you're thinking about ideas, when you don't have an agenda specifically, and you only use them when you're actually formally launching something and you're researching it, or you're test marketing it, or you're getting ideas around it, then obviously then you might have missed the whole thing, right? Also, it's not just about advertising. The most important things about being customer centric is actually about product in use. So if you buy a product and then if you struggle to get the product out, what will you do as a customer? Because you've bought into a wonderful product. Now I can't open the damn thing. So whoever was thinking of seducing me by the advertising did not pay much attention to see how this product is in use. Also, some of the most relevant insights about products, about services, about organizations come on continued thing. It's the same as a relationship, right? There's a honeymoon period where everyone thinks very well of each other. That's your first try. Then the rubber hits the road. Then you have several experiences that take place. So when in good equations, what happens? That benefit comes alive to them on the second, third, fourth. So not only is it a benefit that you have thought about, sometimes it's a benefit that you have not thought about also. So by being informed by them, and completely objectively, of course, right? Because you're not there to do that. So learn from them, not just about advertising or not just to get into their heads, but understand how they live. I'll give you an example. When Lux uses the insight of fantasy and it shows Kareena Kapoor in a bathtub, they're working on that insight that, women's lives are so drab and dull. Everyone has this need for glamour. And through its, great fragrances, through its exotic looking packaging and that whole experience, it is going to transport you. Wonderful. That's a great insight, right? Because it's meant to be fantasy. And of course, it's a good product. It knows its job. It will deliver moisturization and everything else. But along with that, actually, please go ethnographically and see how their bathrooms are. Because if you do that, you'll see that it's a little cubby hole. They don't have space to put anything or hang up anything. The paint is peeling. So why am I painting this depressing picture? There's a drip in the faucet. Why is all this important? Because while they would like to escape all that reality through Lux, when they actually use the product, they have to face some other realities. If it lathers up too much, the bathroom is flooded. If they live where there is water constraint, they want the head of this foam to die down very quickly after it was generated. If there is noise and sound all around, then they are not in the right frame to appreciate it. This you will not understand if you are only thinking that you're using them as a peg for what you want. If you mirror your thing, this is to inform your gut more and more. How much you play into it, how much you don't play into it, when you deploy it, when you don't deploy it. That's a different judgment altogether. Also, in doing so in consumer centricity, what are you saying at bottom? You're an adult and I respect you. That's what you're telling your customer. So you don't talk down to them. You don't become brand superior. You don't unnecessarily pamper them, puff them up, and give them stories. But you according, it's an adult to adult conversation, right? Also, when you want to understand the customer, you can't expect them to come to you all the time. How do you understand somebody? If you want to really understand somebody, if you want to go and meet a friend, if you want to go and visit Nainital, do you see pictures of Nainital and think you visited Nainital? No, you go to Nainital to find out what it's about. So similarly, yeah, getting them is a little convenient for you, but really understanding them is you going to them, meaning be in their environment and be like a sponge, listening and picking up things without judging it, because that's the main problem. Because immediately we panic when they say things which are not necessarily in our favor. Drop your agenda, just listen, just be, okay? And get everyone involved. Customer centric doesn't come from the marketing person. I mean, it's not the insights manager or the marketing manager who's the carrier of insights. Everyone is the carrier of insights. This person's job is to collect them. Let's move on. Yeah, here is where I would like you to actually see an ad which was based on a consumer insight. So, Dr. Chalde, I think we can just play the ad and then I'll talk them through the insight. Yeah. As you watch this ad, this is not a very new one, but as you watch it, look for how how it's been dealt with. Yeah.
Bike.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go back to the slide. So this is a brand called Hero Buzz. It's a bicycle, and this brand was, I think, in the early 2000s. Yeah, and I heard the story of this from one of the key planners who was involved in it. Right. So first of all, when you saw the ad, what was the mode, or what are the things that struck you? If you can just put it down in the chat box, you want to unmute yourself, that's fine. But what were the things that struck you about this narrative of children or teenagers, young teens, tweets? Anyone? Yes, Ram, go ahead.
Can you unmute Ram
Yes,
Murli?
Oh, sir.
Yeah, can you unmute Ms. Ram Kumar?
Just a minute, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think it's my voice is clear. It's audible.
Yeah, we can.
Can hear you. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, little bit join, little delay. Was getting multiple calls. Yes, I saw that video clip. Okay. It's help means it's creating the interest and the emphasis that students enjoying his school life as well as reaching on time. At the same time, he is also motivated himself and take it as his sportive to reach out even home also at the on time.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, great. So, and you can, of course, watch it, ruminate over it a little more. I'll just tell you the backstory of this. Way back when this brand was launched, It was the first wide body technology cycle. And up until that time, if you had, like I said, might be a little bit before your time, but basically, bicycles at that point in time were ladies and boys, girls and boys. They were not unisex. The wide body was the first, which was that. Okay. Now that's just the story of the technology. Yeah. Now, the story of the inciting is that, the team which was working on it went out and they said, hey, we need to go and talk to young people. These are tweens. These are people typically, these are kids who are typically between 10 to 14 or 15 and let's say. And, the planner went there, spoke to people it was in Delhi, and there was not a lot of formal research money. So it was just, they're coming up with ideas for this. And they said, okay, let's just go and talk to some kids. And they spoke to them about this and that. And nothing much came out of it. The children said, yeah, I take my bicycle at this time. And we were obviously asking them questions about bicycles. Then he said, my time was almost up. Kids were getting restless and I had just 1 or 2 questions left. So I decided, chuck it. I'm not going to ask them anything about bikes. And I just threw in the most broad question that I could, not even expecting a reply from a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, that what do you want to be in the future? What is your dream for your future? And a number of them said things like, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a pilot, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be various things, right? Including the girls. So he just, jokingly said to one of those, to the girls, because that was 2000 and that was the year when, we had the Miss India, Miss Universe, Miss World, everything swept by us, right? And he asked that young girl, half jokingly, a pretty young girl, saying that, why only this? Why not, why don't you aim higher? Why not, you don't want to be Miss World and Miss Universe? And you know what the 10-year-old girl turned around and told him? She said, Miss World to 1 साल का होता है, मुझे पूरे जिंदगी राज करना है ना. Now that was from a 10-year-old child. So now what this means is, what this insight ties into is actually, it's a meta trend that was early at that time, and in India it was still rising at that time. Now it is full-fledged everywhere. KGOY, go and look it up. Kids growing older, younger. That's a meta trend. Okay. Now you watch this communication and you see that this child is like a mini adult when it comes to this bike. There is no cute little baby, no chota bacha, tweet, none of that treatment. The child looking straight at the camera and talking, right? And a child saying, why am I being restricted? Why am I supposed to go to school? Why can I not be on the beach? Why can't I decide what I want to do? Why am I being treated like a child? Why am I being controlled? And there's beautiful, fabulous punning, obviously, on the why, which is the why, WHY, as well as the crossword, right? What a beautiful example of insight, but even better example of customer centricity. Because unless you went and asked, so a customer centricity means I want to know everything about what makes them tick. It's not about finding out what feature of the bike. Of course, you'll find that out. But when you are centric, you're centric to their life. And if you're bold and you're innovative, you'll obviously be differentiated from doing that. Now, in every case, you may or may not take up the boldest insight. You may take something else. But to be sure, unless you connect with people in a true way, in a way in which they can say exactly what they want to say to you, not as lab rats, you won't get to this. Yeah. Next slide. Just very simple things. Every time you watch a piece of communication after today, try and look for what would be the human insight underlying it, and try and think about at a human level how you respond to that insight. They don't have to be highly dramatic. But why we've shown you these examples, there are many examples like this. But the paint category, for example, has seen a great transition from just, going to a communication which was about Mera wala pink or something, which was about individuation. We're not saying that that's not important, or gorgeous looking homes, or extremely upmarket. Yeah, all that was there, and that is also still valid for some people. But increasingly, if you look at what is happening, right, it's about simple things, about product usage, how you feel. So anyone who's painted their house knows how it feels, because it disrupts my life. There is allergies everywhere, and that was the cue for people to come up with ads with paints which are not allergenic. And then, it takes me so long, there's disruption, 15 days, nothing can be done. So that probably was also the cue to go faster into fast drying paint, right? Not the only, but important, right? How can I wash my paint? I just paid so much money for it. Now, after that, if it'll become dull and faded, then my investment has gone down the tube. And, I can't buy a new house every time, but then paint helps me to keep it new, right? These are simple things about how people feel. You feel this when, you are actually painting your house. But the important thing is to bring that into the right context and right territory of your product and come from this to that rather than the other way around. Yeah. Because there's several examples like this, but keep on keeping them. It is because I want my house painted without disruption that I should be offering them something rather than I have this technology and I'm going to peddle it. I will peddle it, but then if they don't see benefit in it, then that will be a long process to then start establishing how it is fitting into their life, right? So just be inspired by everything every day. Yeah, it's more. So the question that marketers often ask is, okay, what's in it for me, right? Because it's a lot of investment and there is an investment of time and effort in this. And there are many pressing things to be done when you're in it. First of all, I think if you invest in customer centricity, I think first people don't have a choice, to be honest. Because now we are in the era of, there was an era of brand and corporate superior and consumer, inferior. Then there was a sense of partnership. And now it is partnership with the leaning towards the side of the consumer. It's a great time to be a consumer in every field. As you can see, you're spoiled for choice, right? So there isn't too much of a choice in this fragmented digital world. If you want to get someone's attention, you have no choice but to get close to them. That's one. Second is the concept that a lot of cars and banks use extremely well, which is it's not just about this one purchase now, it's about what is the customer lifetime value that you represent to me, because 4 years down the line, you'll think of, upgrading your car or you'll buy another product from this bank. At that point in time, if you've built a relationship with me, then perhaps I will think of you and I will not want to break that if you yourself provide the variety and demonstrate closeness to you. Second is consumer centricity allows you to connect in a more authentic voice. Remember this, if the more filters you put on something, it's only fooling ourselves. Right? The more authentic you appear to them, the more real the connection will be. You can show them the most exotic, the most fantastical, the most out there technology. Yet when it comes to touch points, which are about service and about after sales and about usage, it's all about reality, right? It's all about authenticity. How true are you to the promises that you make? Also, like I just gave you the example of the Hero bus, you can show a different point of view that will allow you to differentiate because you're inspired by consumer life, not by someone else, right? And then we should be always looking beyond trial to usage. We talked about this. Also, look for new things because their lives are in flux, they're emerging. Sometimes we may be in consumer centricity putting things onto the table which they themselves have not realized that they should be doing. That is also being consumer centric. Consumer centric is not always just listening to them in a way that you're parroting what is there, but it's batting on their side. When you bat on someone's side, somebody doesn't realize ahead, but you do. That will be great for them. That's what consumer centricity allows you to do. So that when that trend actually begins to change, they see that you were batting on it early for them. And then most importantly, think about consumer centricity, which is 101 of marketing is you're focusing on the right set of consumers to be consumer centric. So you can't be all things to all people, but identify who's your, like Arjuna and that fish, right? Who is that bullseye? And to that person, I know everything of everything. So brands which operate in certain niches, they do this. They're not caring about general thing, but they're focusing on someone and they get it, right? And in brands that are long, that have much larger audiences, they make opportunities to try and get feedback from them at every touch point. And you would have heard touch points and customer journeys because of this, because it's a journey. It's not just a purchase or a project or anything like that. Yeah. Next slide, please. So that's simple to understand, isn't it? Just like your career, just like your relationships, just like your friendships, just like the experiences that you seek on a holiday. It's not an activity, it's a culture, right? So some of the things to do is really that you look at many sources. People look at their people who call their helplines. People look at what their own employees are saying about things. People talk to their salespeople because those have a year. People go and invest in talking to their retailers. People go onto digital platforms. People understand what is happening into the category. People understand what competition is doing. It's not just research formally, but the more you do open-ended agenda for a customer centricity point of view, the more you have an open-ended agenda, the better connection you will have. So create a culture of, and then once you do this, the next step is how will you get to the inside? It's like jamming. Unless you jam and exchange and converse and create that culture. And very, very importantly, diversity of hiring. Everyone is like people like us. We're all going to come up with ideas of people like us for customers who are not like us. So the more we do that, the better it will be. And like I said, it's about building the muscle. And so people say, I operate on gut. We say, inform the gut all the time. And you can only inform it through building inside muscle. Yeah. Next slide. When we say, what do we mean by diversity of sources? This is some of the approaches that we take. There is no one right approach. There are many approaches. But what we would do is that if we really wanted to deeply understand something, right, we would not just go and talk to the consumers. We would say, talk to some experts, key opinion leaders, ask them what they do. We would say, don't just talk to people, see what they're doing. They say many things, but they do differently, right? If I polled you right now and I just asked you an open-ended question, like, do you want to buy a Merc? Do you plan to buy a Merc? You'll say, yeah, sometime in my life, yes. Does that mean you'll actually buy one? No. There might be just 0.001% who are actually doing something. So if I'm interested in the behavior of that 0.001%, I should go to the ones who actually bought it. Behavior. So we say attitude is great, behavior is gold, because people have actually done something about it, right? And increasingly it's about that. And catching them where they're doing it rather than asking. Idea sculpting. Culture, without knowing the context. Without knowing the context of something, it doesn't really matter, right? I'll give you a quick example. There's this fantastic podcast by series and Rory Sutherland, who's one of the really, really veterans of insight in advertising, and Ogilvy. He heads a behavioral science division, and he talks. And there are interesting podcasts. You should go to Spotify and catch them. But he gives one example over there about the London Bobby, right? Not about the London Bobby, about the London cab driver, right? And how that cab driver has stayed relevant in an era of Uber and why that person is important. So apparently, to become a cab driver, you need to train for 4 years in London. Okay, and in that 4 years, and you're tested continuously. So you're to pass these tests to become. The tests are not about driving only. One of the tests is that if there are some 300 streets, right, the driver has to master each and every street. He has to visit the street. He has to know how that street is, and he has to master the name of that street. And they're very similar sounding streets, so it's a very difficult thing to do, right? Now, what is the point of all of this? Point of it from the customer centricity point of view is when somebody has, and only a few of those people actually survive, the ones who originally start, if you have to stay the course for 4 years to do something. So that means the final pool is smaller, right? So the customer insight on this is that if somebody has invested this much time in this, they're very proud of what they do. So they will never do anything to let their own profession down because they will lose their license over it. Second, because this person knows London so intimately, you don't have to worry about whether Google knows it or doesn't know it. This person does, right? So it's about that. Now, the culture of that cab driver is not the same here. So the thing is knowing the culture, looking at trends and meta-analysis, and looking whether there is a sign of this trend coming, or that I can trigger the trend early, or there's a niche audience for this trend already, right? and consumers in their surroundings. So one last example I'll give you about trend spotting is many years ago we were researching at that point in time this set of hotels. It was a chain from Taj, but one of the lower end ones. It was called the Ginger, and some of you might have heard of it and all used it. And the philosophy of Ginger was very simple, that it went to all these locations where were smaller towns, more industrial locations, and even if it is in a city, it's on the outskirts where a lot of factories and manufacturing units are. And the whole logic was that people who, people who visit these places, they don't have a nice place to stay, and they have to come into the city for that one big 3-star or whatever that's there. So instead, we can give them something very close to the corporate quarters. And they modeled it along the studios and things of Europe, etc., where you get this as no fuss. You get this, you get a breakfast, but there's no room service, and there's no thing to wash and stuff. But basically, there is a washing machine on every floor. And that concept did not take off for a long time. And when we went and spoke to people, I remember some of the men telling us, घर में भी मैं कपड़े नहीं धोता हूँ, या काम पे आके एक 3-star होटल में बैठ के मैं कपड़े धोऊंगा अभी. अच्छा, now I come back at 10 o'clock in the night. You are in an industrial suburb. There is nothing around. You don't have room service. You're strict about your rules. You say 10 o'clock close is closed. So there's no food. The buffet is done and I can't eat. I would rather go to that landmark hotel in Kanpur. At least the moment I come there, somebody comes running and says, "Saab, main aapka luggage uthaun?" And they proceed to make me feel like a king. What does that insight tell you? As Indians, we like to be pampered when we go out, especially on someone else's money, because our lives are otherwise incomplete. Because, in our own lives, we don't have that much. So a lot of people treat travel as an admissible luxury. It's one of the few perks of the job. If you take it away from me, what will I do? But now you have a whole generation of young people who's fine with backpacking and hostels and Airbnbs, isn't it? So the trend is changing. You have to know when and how to implement the trend. Yeah. Of course, go to their homes or shop with them where they shop. Don't make assumptions. Next slide. And so just remember this. Use what we call the 3C lens. When you're about consumer centricity, it's about being close to the consumer. It's about developing cultural partnerships. And it's always about converging it through collaborative thinking. Yeah. So I leave it there. And if there are any questions, we'll address them.
Thank you, Nirupama. I think very big landscape of customer insights as well as customer centricity part of it. I think while there are quite a few questions, but then for want of time, because we're just running against time, we just have 2 minutes to wind this up. I just want to have, one of the questions that that was put up there is that just taking a cue from what you said some time back about the Kirana Wala, right, Nirupam, right? Now, if you juxtapose the way he interacts with his consumers and clientele, right? Now, if you juxtapose this one, very big company like FMCGs like your Unilevers or P&Gs of the world, or Patanjali's or Marico's of the world, or any company for that matter, right? Now, how do you implant the same psyche amongst everybody in the company? Because it's like you rightly said sometime back. Now, customer insighting is not just one department or one function or one silo or guy doing it, but I think it has to be part of every person has to be part of it. So therefore, how do you transport that kind of culture into the company?
Of course, in the case of some companies, they have a formal way of doing that, because when you join them, you'll be sent on a 4-month sales stint into a remote village in Uttar Pradesh, and that will bring you down pretty fast. It'll also take you up very fast in consumer muscle.
Absolutely.
So I think that your first touch point, if it is your touch point into whatever job function you're in, if your first job touch point is with the consumer, you will always remember that. Absolutely. And secondly, if you can create the environment in a large organization, I think they deliberately do that to take people out of their comfort zone. They create smaller companies within a larger company, or many informal, jam sessions. And always, I think the biggest trick to this is that after you get all of this, can you jam with very unusual people? Like I, in my innovation sessions, have very insightful R&D people. extremely insightful people in admin and finance who've never been in a creative group. They are very creative. It's because they bring a fresh perspective and they don't have any illusions
Absolutely.
about their being the experts on something. So the more you go for diversity on this,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you're able to sort of look at the consumer angle, what you do. I mean, you go and eat at a multiplex every day. You eat at a multiplex. Do you reflect on the fact that the popcorn is more expensive than the price of the ticket and wonder why? So should. It's all around you. What makes that okay for you to do?
Exactly.
Because you're actually buying into an experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who go to a multiplex. If you watch them, they stand outside the counters and say, "Kaun sa picture dekhe?" Meaning the picture is not important. Meaning
Exactly.
being in the. So it very simple. It's all around you. I'm just putting words to it. This is my
Absolutely.
professional job to do it. But it's
Absolutely.
easy to do it. It's very easy to do.
Thank you so much, Nirupama, and especially joining us on a Saturday evening. And absolutely, fabulous to go through these insights. I'm sure every participant must have picked up quite a few actionable insights, right? I think because everybody has got something or other as far as this little session is concerned. But from all of us, from all of our participants, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully, we should be hosting you very soon for another interesting episode on customer insights, Nirupama.
Thank you so much. Look forward to it. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Thank all of you participants.
Have a
Thank you
great
so
day.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye for
Thanks.
now.